Welcome back, Irish fans, to Breaking Down Braves Boys podcast. Today, one of the most exciting episodes I've probably filmed ever. JJ Starling is Irish, and Notre Dame is back in business. JJ Starling, if you didn't see a few minutes ago, probably when you're seeing this, committed to Notre Dame, ranked 33rd in the country by 247, 40th by Rivals. In the 247 era is the highest rated recruit Notre Dame has ever gotten. Notre Dame beat out Duke, Syracuse mainly, and then Northwestern and Stanford were also in his top five. JJ joins Dom Campbell to make up Notre Dame's 22 class. Depending on where you look, two top 100 recruits. So Notre Dame, even though the classes looked bleak for a while, Notre Dame has made some moves and has turned this into a pretty decent two-man class so far. Starling is Notre Dame's first recruit from La Lumiere, which is a school that they should have gotten multiple guys from, like Jaden Ivey. Isaiah Stewart they missed on as well. But Notre Dame made a play with Starling, used their deep-rooted connections with guys like Pat Holmes, the head coach there who was a manager at Notre Dame, and they have all sorts of other connections over there. Used that to get Starling get in the door after he transferred there, and Notre Dame used those connections and they paid off. So great for them there. Hopefully they can continue to grow those connections and get some guys that they wouldn't have otherwise got. They have they have one offer out to a Lalu guy right now and another they've talked to. So Notre Dame could be in the position to get some more guys from Lalu in 2023, and Starling's 100% going to help their case there. So great to look at there. Going to look into Starling's recruitment more because I wanted to touch on how Notre Dame did it. As opposed to a guy like Dom, who kind of fell in love with Notre Dame the first time he saw it. Starling needed more time, but Notre Dame definitely made him the guy, and that's why they got him. I love how Notre Dame approach the recruitment. It's a little risky to put all your eggs in one basket like they did with Starling. They kind of, I wouldn't say they stopped talking to Rodney Rice, but they made it clear that JJ is their priority at point guard, and essentially it seems like they turned away a top 100 recruit in Rodney Rice, who they still would have had to make a run for because he has connections at Virginia Tech and Louisville he also seemed to really like. But they chose Starling over another top 100 recruit. If that doesn't tell you how they feel about JJ, then I don't know what will. If Notre Dame has rarely ever turned away top 100 guys because they have another guy, it's normally because they can't get the top 100 guy, which I don't know if they would have got Rice anyway. But overall, Notre Dame has been on Starling for years. First contacted him the first day of the contact period in summer of 2020. I think it was June. A few weeks later, they offered. Then Starling transferred to Lalu. Notre Dame really got going then. Since then, COVID has really screwed them with the visits and stuff. But Starling went on two unofficials over the summer to Notre Dame. Was one of Notre Dame's only visitors the whole summer. I think the only other visitors they had was Dom on an official, JR and Blake on their officials, just because they never got to take them, so those don't really count. And then I think Xavier Booker was on campus for an unofficial in like August. But they pushed pretty much all the visits back to football season, but they wanted Starling on campus in the summer. And then as we moved on, Starling was on the official a couple months later. I think it was on Labor Day weekend when Notre Dame football was at FSU. But Notre Dame really pulled out the red carpet for him. They got the new visit pictures, and then they pulled out the Ferrari. So definitely showed how much they wanted him there. They really went for it that weekend, and they made that clear with pretty much everything. They wanted JJ bad. And then the first day, they could go to schools and watch practices and workouts. They were at Lalu watching JJ early in the morning. So overall, Notre Dame has just thrown all their eggs in the JJ basket, and it worked out for him. They beat out a Duke team who has had some phenomenal recruiting prowess lately, getting guys like Derek Lively, filling out just a really good class overall. And Starling had the opportunity to be a part of that. Just crazy that Bray was able to beat out Shire. I've heard that narrative that Starling wasn't a take for Duke. I don't really believe that. I heard Jeff Goodman on a podcast a while ago talking about how Duke wanted to finish their class out with Mitchell and Starling. Doesn't look like they're going to get either right now. Well, yeah, they didn't get one. But it looks like Duke would have taken Starling. I think overall Starling liked being the guy at Notre Dame more and probably set him up better for the future in that scenario. So crazy that they beat Duke out in any scenario. It's tough to do that. And then Syracuse too. Starling is from like right by Syracuse originally before he went to Lalu, and somehow they beat him out as well. So crazy recruiting win for Mike Bray, maybe one of his best recruiting wins of all time. And you can kind of see why the staff pushed so hard for JJ because they knew something like this could happen. We'll get into the caliber of a player he is in a minute and why they did that for him. You can definitely see why once I go into him as a player. But his impact overall is going to be huge for the program. Everything we assumed about the program after this year is now in question because of JJ. Guys with eligibility like Cormac, Trey, Dane, Prentice, Nate, Robbie, all could come back after this year, and that makes it a little more intriguing to play with a borderline 5-star recruit who just zaps some life into the program. That's a really interesting thing to think about. What does Nate think of that? I mean, maybe Nate could go to the NBA after this year. Maybe he doesn't. But maybe think about how much buzz is going to be around this team heading into the offseason. Is Nate going to think about maybe returning? I don't think Prentice is going to return, probably because they have so many guards, but Cormac and Trey could. Overall, this could be just a program changer in every aspect. And Bray said this morning that he's not close to retirement. You don't think this played a part in that? Having a 5-star recruit, well, not a 5-star recruit, a borderline 5-star, ranked top 30 or top 35. You don't think having a top 35 player come in is intriguing to Bray? He said he has some juice. Wonder where that juice came from. Maybe getting JJ Starling. So going into his game, JJ's a combo guard who can handle the ball. He can play off of it really well as well. Saw that at Lalu. They have some shorter guards. And JJ was playing off the ball, playing primarily the 2 offensively. But when he did have the ball in his hands, playing point guard, he's smart. He was composed. Always seemed to make a nice pass or go get his own shot in some way. Notre Dame fans have been pretty frustrated with Prentice Hub being erratic at times. And I've been a little frustrated myself. But it looks like Starling won't be that way. Can we expect him to be like Steve Nash and come in and distribute the ball and run and gun as a freshman? Probably not. But he can definitely be a steady point guard who can get his own shot. And I think he'll be a good enough passer to run Notre Dame's offense as well. I've seen Lalu get into some sets and stuff with Starling at point guard, and they've had nice possessions. I also wanted to get into that. I think coming from Lalu really helps JJ. Like JR and Blake were really good players in high school, but they came from small schools in Indiana. Maybe not small schools, just the competition wasn't very high. But JJ's learned how to play with other good players and against other good players. And he's learned how to play in a system with cuts and motion and screening. And I think a lot of guys, not specifically JR and Blake, but a lot of guys that Notre Dame's got have not played in the system like JJ's played in or against the level of competition he's played in. So I think that'll really help him become ready when he gets on campus as a freshman to do some things early on. As for his shooting, I think this is maybe the main thing about JJ and his off-the-dribble ability. But while Ryan Ayers was on staff at Notre Dame, I guess that tells you how long they've been going after JJ. He said that Starling was the best shooter in the country. That was before Starling's junior year even started. So he was saying Starling was the best shooter in the country as a sophomore. I've also heard people say that he has an NBA-level jump shot. And it's hard to disagree if you watch a full game of him. It seems like he shoots like 7 for 9 every game from 3. He's an unbelievable shooter and perfect for Notre Dame. Almost reminds me of like a Buddy Hield with his jump shot in college. Can pull it from anywhere, can pull it off the dribble, off the catch, just anything you need him to do. You'll see in the highlights that I put up, I think I put him up probably like a minute before this. He's one of the best off-the-dribble scorers Notre Dame's had in recent memory. He can create space. He's shifty. He's quicker than you think. He's athletic, and he can rise above guys for a shot. And obviously his shot is something else. So overall, unbelievable offensive player. If he stays at Notre Dame for 4 years, he could probably average 20 points per game by his senior year. He's unbelievable scorer, has so much stuff going for him offensively. It's hard to find negatives. I guess shot selection would be the only negative, but he hits so many contested threes and tough shots off balance that it's hard to criticize his shot selection. So crafty around the rim too, like you saw in those plays. Can get to the rim better than a lot of guys on Notre Dame's roster already. And we're just going to keep seeing him improve as he plays in prep school. Averaged 15 points a game last year for Lalu, a little under, I guess, like 14.7, 8, or 9, something like that. But he's just going to keep getting better, playing against top competition in his senior year, and that's extremely exciting to think about. As a defender, I don't think Starling's perfect. I think when he locks in, he's a good defender, but his wingspan and his frame, I think, give him a nice ceiling on that end. He's just got to be more consistently a good defender. I don't know if he's ever going to be like Blake Wesley on that end, but that's going to be a scary backcourt to go against. If Cormac, Trey, Blake, and JR are all in the same, or Blake and JJ are all in the same backcourt, goodness, that's going to be tough to get shots up against. Everybody's 6'5", everybody has a good wingspan, and then with Anthony Solomon coaching them, they're going to be in really good shape on that end. I don't think Starling's going to be a liability at all defensively. Moving on to kind of how the 22 class shapes out now. Will Wade said a few weeks ago, I wanted to start here. If you have a good 1 and a good 4, you have a chance to be pretty good. Something along those lines. Notre Dame has that with Dom and JJ now. 2 top 100 guys, depending on where you look, and the chance to add another guy, Van Allen Lubin, who's also a top 100 combo forward. So you could potentially have a good 1 and 2 good 4s, 2 top 100 4s. So Notre Dame, I don't think will have the best 5-man class that they thought that was possible once, but Starling and Dom, I think this is their best class since 2018, especially if they can add somebody else in the next few months. Maybe they pick up a guy in the late signing period who they like, or maybe they get Van Lubin. I don't know exactly where Notre Dame stands with him right now, but there's definitely a reason for optimism with recruiting right now. If they can get Starling, who says they can't get another top 100 guy, and Van Lubin. So overall, I don't know if it's going to be the 2018 class in terms of recruiting rankings or anything, but man, this is a really good class for what it is. Definitely quality over quantity, which I'd much rather than taking 4 or 5 3-stars to get your class ranked where Notre Dame's is. Overall, just a huge recruiting win in all aspects. I think Starling perfectly fits the mold of a high-level recruit that would want to come to Notre Dame. Just a guy who's smart, fits into the culture at Notre Dame, fits into the offense, can shoot, can defend, just everything Notre Dame would want in a high-level prospect, and everything Notre Dame has to offer will be taken advantage of by JJ Starling. He's that kind of guy. I think he's just the perfect guy for Notre Dame. And if there was a top 100 guy that Notre Dame was going to get in this class, I thought it was going to be Starling, but I didn't believe that. I couldn't even believe it when they got the first crystal ball. Just an unbelievable recruiting win for Mike Bray of a guy who could potentially become an NBA player one day just because of his shot. And if he can improve at Notre Dame in the next few years, his ceiling is really high. And he could really help Notre Dame make a run next year. After this year, which this year looks pretty bright as well, next year could be even better, depending on how that roster shapes out. If they get a transfer big man, there's no telling how good that team could be. With Blake, JR, Cormac, Trey, Dane, maybe you get Nate back, maybe you get Robbie back, and then Zona, Taylor, hopefully a transfer big man. That's what I think is next when it comes to roster building for Notre Dame. You got Dom coming off the bench, Alex Wade, Elijah Morgan, just another deep roster, great guard depth. Even if only one of Cormac, Dane, Trey comes back, which Dane has pretty much already said he's coming. Cormac, I think, will play next year just because he's only played for 2 years before this year. He's going to play his 3rd season this year. I think he'll probably test out the waters for a 4th year. Trey, I could see coming back as well, just because he's in the same situation as Cormac, essentially. I think he's played 1 more year, but still. I think they would want the chance to run the show with JJ. So the future is bright for Notre Dame basketball. They might be back, especially if this year goes well. Notre Dame is in a really good spot. Mike Bray's in a good spot. Just big props to the staff for pulling this off. I thought they were in over their head here, but they proved me wrong. Got arguably their biggest recruiting win of all time. Beat out Duke and the hometown team for JJ Starling. So thank you guys for watching. Go Irish. Peace.